Brendan McGinty. I've previously held the role of Director of Industrial Relations and Human Resource Services with the Irish Employers Organisation, IBEC. That's a role I held for some 13 years, up to about 2013. And since then I've been working, running my own strategic HR consulting firm and doing work here in Ireland, but also internationally. And I think the relevance of this topic around the essentials of strategic planning for me is that I've seen that whole issue from both the executive or secretariat point of view, and also being a board member myself and a current serving chairman of a small state agency. So I have a good understanding of the issues that voluntary members of boards face. I think one of the key issues is that is to get to know the organisation. You won't figure it out on day one, but familiarise yourself with the rules of the organisation, the bylaws, and so on, just to understand the key parameters. And also, don't be afraid to talk to some of the longer-serving members of the board, because those members will have gathered a lot of experience and insights about the organisation. And it's really about building your school of experience about what it is like to help with the governance of a BMO. Well, having a really well constructed strategy, to my mind, is the difference between success and failure of a BMO. I mean, remember, strategy is really the roadmap from where you are today to where you want the organisation to be in the future. And I think regardless of when a BMO has been established, a strategy, a financial plan, and a budget for the organisation are all absolutely essential. I think we have to remember that businesses join an organisation when they understand what the benefit is to them. It's crucial for the organisation to understand what's important to both members and potential members. And a strategic plan will usually cover, say, a 3 to 5 year period. It helps the organisation make better and more consistent decisions. And in my experience, look, while members of the board will change over time, usually the mission and the vision of the BMO should ideally remain pretty stable. And a strategy and a sound financial plan will obviously save future members of the board from having to reinvent the organisation maybe every time changes occur on the board of directors or a term of office expires. I think amongst the key steps, obviously, is the whole issue of getting buy-in at the beginning, securing buy-in by ensuring that both the senior executives within the management team and obviously board members are absolutely committed to the strategic planning process and implementing the outcomes. There also needs to be a process plan that establishes, I think, important milestones and responsibilities for the process and who should be part of that exercise. And agreeing a mission and vision statement that obviously clearly defines why the organisation exists is a key step. The organisation mission and the long-term goals derived from it will tend maybe not to change too often, and the mission should give a really succinct, overarching description of what the organisation wishes to achieve. The services and the benefits provided is really the connection between what members need and how the organisation delivers for them, and those need to be carefully aligned to the needs of members. And it's also important that the organisation identifies with all its kind of key stakeholders and whatever their policy positions may be, in order to make sure that they can have a working relationship with them. Well, I think first of all you have to review where the organisation is currently at, looking at the present state of the market, looking at a competitor analysis and the prevailing external environment and the impact of that. I think it should be focused on deciding where the priorities should be and then developing the strategies that are needed to reach those goals. It's really important to define who the organisation intends to represent. That makes it more efficient for member recruitment and allows prospective members to know if they can identify with the organisation. This is a really important issue and is key not to assign responsibilities and agree objectives for the day-to-day operations without providing what they need to get the job done in terms of resources. But having set out the strategic goals for the organisation, it would be usual for measurable objectives to be set out under an annual action plan with the participation of those responsible for its execution. Now, in my experience, it's better to have a few well-defined and clear goals instead of a whole long list of things to be achieved. And of course, those should be a reasonable challenge. They should be realistic and achievable. They should be in writing and have timelines associated with them as well. And the number of objectives, as I say, should be limited, should be reasonable, and should be capable of being prioritised, and they should broadly relate to one another. I think it's also important to break the objectives down into clear actions that are undertaken to produce the results that are needed. I think there should be clear and measurable criteria of progress and clear timelines for those to be delivered. And I think when responsibility is assigned to the Secretariat, I think it's also critical that the level of resources, that is clearly understood. If all of that's done properly, I think it does help to instill confidence, both within the board and the wider membership, and support its ability to secure its own revenue. I know for a fact from my own experience, many BMOs do tend to get into some difficulty financially when they don't fully account for their costs and have to either cancel programs, reduce staff, or maybe in extreme cases can no longer operate. I think there are three key areas to focus on. One is performance. I think board members are responsible for scrutinising the performance of the Secretariat and the senior management in meeting the objectives that have been set. Now, the board will usually have the responsibility for obviously determining levels of remuneration, particularly for the Secretary General or the Executive Director, and have the main role in appointing and, where necessary, removing that person and in succession planning. I think the second is really around monitoring. Any strategic plan is obviously a working document in my experience. So it's important to have periodic reviews to allow whatever adjustments might need to be taken in light of progress that has been achieved or where there are challenges, and so that progress against the performance indicators are properly being taken into account. And then the final one for me is probably around evaluation. So having created a strategy, you're evaluating it on a regular basis to compare results and the stated objectives. And that allows the board critically to evaluate the performance in delivering on the strategy. It'll improve the performance and effectiveness of all the activities of the BMO, provide a basis too for any revision that's needed of strategy, and inform the development of new programs, results, or activities. I think the key thing to remember is, that strategic planning is not only about just helping the organisation establish what it does, but it also helps to identify when the board should actually say no. So, a business member organisation has to act very carefully not to waste either time or resources on services that don't actually relate to its mission. If it's not clear how any of these relate to its mission, then obviously the organisation should, in my view, always be prepared to say no. Sometimes that's hard, but it has to be done. And ensure it focuses its attention on those programs and services that help to deliver on its strategic commitments. And when strategic planning is done well, those aspects can be carefully taken into account.